Hi there, my name is Toby, and today I want to keep talking about Tantric Mathematics, or what the ancient Greeks called incommensurability. This is the fundamental mathematics of the universe. It is the grand unified field theory, and it is the golden ratio. This is the mathematics around the golden ratio proportionality. This is a natural proportionality. It's a ratio, a relative size, but it's so important because it's to do with fundamental geometry, relationship between a square and a circle, and it's to do with life. All life, growth, natural growth follows this mathematics, and it has to. There's only one solution for this particular type of growth, and that is the golden ratio solution. So this mathematics is the law of the universe. It's the only way it can be. So nobody created this. Mathematics was not created. Mathematics is fundamental, beyond time, beyond space. It's the way things have to be. So this is the ultimate truth about the universe. And this mathematics describes everything. Now, mathematics is only consciousness. It only exists in consciousness. We have to think about it. We can write it down, that's physical, but it only occurs in consciousness, the process of logic. So the universe must be consciousness because it is mathematics. Consciousness is not physical, it is spiritual, abstract. So I've talked about this before. The universe must be spiritual. And we have space. The universe is space, but space is not physical, has no physicality. Space is spiritual. It is consciousness. Consciousness creates space. By definition. Because consciousness is mathematics, mathematics is geometry, the way things have to be. Geometry, say, is a circle, but if you want to imagine a circle, if you close your eyes and visualize a circle, you have to imagine it in space. You create space in your mind. That space is the same as when you open your eyes. I've got two objects here in front of me. You can see them. The objects are physical, but the distance between them is space. That is not physical. That is an abstract thing, a distance. The objects are physical, but the space between them is not. If you close your eyes and visualize these same two objects, just do it with me. Close your eyes, visualize them. The objects in your mind are not physical, but you can still see the distance between them. The space is still there. Space is in consciousness. It's the same space. When you open your eyes and see them, it's the same space. And the universe is made up of this. That is not physical. That we can call the ether. Space itself, not physical. Now the problem arises, what is physical? What is an atom? It's a big problem. We actually have not answered that question. Because space is not physical, consciousness, but then what is physical? Where does an atom come from? What is it? Well, the answer is, it's in the mathematics. You see, it's all created by geometry. A circle, that is geometry. A sphere, that is geometry. But we cannot say it is anything different. Remember, the universe is consciousness. That's it. So an atom must also be consciousness. But we have to explain how it is formed. What is it? And the only way we can say that is if we look at the universe and imagine this consciousness is a fluid, a pure fluid. So space is actually a fluid, not physical, nothing physical there, but it is a consciousness fluid. These two objects in front of me are separated by a consciousness fluid, the ether. And this fluid is moving. And the fluid can condense and expand. And at different levels of condensation, we have different effects. Remember, if we go back to the beginning of the mathematics, golden ratio, we have a circle. That is the infinite universe, an infinite sphere. And we also have zero, a point. That is an infinitesimal sphere. The whole of space exists between these two. And if we draw a line through the middle, we have a movement, an expansion and a contraction. And if we draw a wavy line, this is moving now. So we have a vortex, an expanding spiral and a contracting spiral. But this is still pure fluid, consciousness fluid, not physical. But it will move in a spiral, condensing into a point, and it will expand in a spiral out to infinity. So what happens then? Well, at some point you've got two spirals now. One has to be clockwise, one has to be anti-clockwise. It has to. Because there is balance. The circle is balance, and it must always be balanced. The circle is totality. Everything fits inside this circle. This is very deep mathematics. That's the problem of a square and a circle. How do you fit a square into a circle? It won't fit. Now you have to do very complicated mathematics to try and work out how you can fill up a circle from squares or triangles. But it must fit. The only way it fits is with this infinite number, the golden ratio. It's an infinite number. That's also very interesting. It means the universe must be infinite. Infinite movement going on. And this infinite movement must be between two spirals, clockwise and anti-clockwise, expansion and contraction. But it's still fluid consciousness, the ether, not yet physical. So these two spirals can interact, clockwise, anti-clockwise. And because we've got movement in both directions, we can create balance. Sometimes they will move one way and the other way together, and you've got a little point of balance. Now you've created a bubble of movement. But it's got a certain level of condensation. But it's a bubble. It's become a sphere in its own right. Like these balls here, these crystal balls. This is a sphere, a bubble, but I've created it. So we can have a bubble of this consciousness fluid. We can call that a soul, but it's moving, it's spinning. Remember, clockwise and anti-clockwise, and they're spinning in opposite directions, expanding and contracting. It's creating this bubble. It appears to be static, but really it's two contra movements in harmony. It's a frequency, a cymatic. And we can look at it and see it spinning one way, or we can see it spinning the other way. But it's held in suspension in the fundamental geometry, a sphere with a vertical line going through it. It's spinning around a vertical line, and we can call this a soul, a bubble of consciousness. But you can get different ones. Imagine a spiral going denser, denser, denser. At some point, this spiral, this vortex of fluid consciousness, gets so dense that something happens. It changes. it becomes something else. It becomes light. At a certain level of condensation of this etheric consciousness fluid, it will become light. And light is very interesting. Light is still a fluid. Again, modern science does not understand light. Light is not actually a frequency. It is still a pure fluid. It is the ether. The ether is fluid consciousness, but as this condenses, it turns into light, which is still pure fluid consciousness, but now it's very dense. And light is now visible. We can see it. That's where you get these balls of light. Psychic balls of light, but also physical balls of light. These UFOs, these balls, orbs around a crop circle. They were ancient. We saw them in the forest, little balls of light. Highly condensed etheric energy in a bubble. But again, it's held in suspension. It's expanding and contracting at the same time, but they're in balance. And they're in balance at a certain density, condensation of this pure fluid. So it's a bubble of light. Okay, now it gets more interesting. We get denser. Remember, light is still consciousness, but it's fixed now. It's fixed at a certain density. This bubble of light is held in suspension. Just like I, the soul, am a bubble of etheric energy, etheric light, held in suspension. I've got this self-awareness. I am a personality. I'm held in suspension in a bubble. So light can condense further. Imagine now, again, you've got these two vortices of pure fluid ether, consciousness fluid, condensing denser, denser, denser. Light will condense further towards plasma. Now, I haven't talked about electricity yet. I'm coming back to it. But light is fluid, still pure fluid, moving density. That will denser, denser, denser. The fluid gets thicker, thicker, and thicker. Plasma is now even denser fluid. It's still pure fluid. Consciousness energy, highly condensed. Now, hear me out. We get these bubbles of plasma. That is a ball lightning. Ball lightning, everyone knows it. That is when lightning, which is plasma, gets captured in a ball. It's starting to spin around itself. What is really happening is two vortices of the ether, consciousness fluid, are spinning, one clockwise, one counterclockwise. One is condensing, one is expanding, but they are at a level of density. They've gone very dense now. So at a highly condensed level, they've turned into plasma, but they've balanced out. They've created a little bubble, a ball of plasma. That is again a bubble of this pure fluid consciousness energy, but it's stuck. It's stuck at that particular density. It's a bubble, but it's within space. Remember, we can see it. It's now objective, a bubble that we can all see. See, I am a bubble, a soul. You cannot see my soul, but you can feel it. We are all souls, bubbles of consciousness. You cannot see us, but we are still in space, and you can feel us. We can feel each other. A bubble of light, we can feel it, and we can see it. A bubble of plasma, same thing. Plasma is also emitting light. It's also light. And it's also etheric. Etheric energy condensed into light energy, condensed into plasma. But now within the plasma, even more condensed, smaller ones, Remember, as it condenses, it gets smaller. Space itself is collapsing inwards. This is space I'm talking about. Not physical, but it becomes objective, manifest at a certain point. It collapses in until we get a tiny bubble of plasma, which we can call an atom. And that is simply a suspension of these two vortices of the ether held together in a bubble. Now, an atom is at a particular balance point. It's a particular size and a particular balance where the ether can spin around, keep this balance going. It's the most condensed form of the ether that can maintain this balance. So we can call it an atom, but it is not physical. It is simply a balance point of condensed space, fluid consciousness. And it is a particular balance because of mathematics. Again, this is to do with the golden ratio. It's to do with the relative proportionality of expansion and contraction. That is still Tantric Mathematics. Now, there's more to it than that, because I still have not talked about electricity or gravity or magnetism. But once you can understand the different densities of the ether, or at least you can visualize it, now we can talk about the movement, because there is a movement between the densities. And the movement between the densities, we can call this electricity or electrostatics. Let's call this electrostatics. Electrostatics means a potential division of energy. It's not really a plus and a minus, it's really an expansion and a contraction. When you've got something that is expanded, it wants to contract again. But also sometimes you can have something that is compacted. It's compacted inwards and it wants to expand again, like a spring. Here's the thing, once you have got an atom is this perfect balance of expansion and contraction. But this atom can be affected. Think of it like this, a spring. So when you squeeze the atom in, it wants to bounce out. But if you pull the atom out, it wants to pull back in, spring back in. That is electrostatics. Sometimes you have an atom that is stretched out. It's created a different harmonic, a balance, but that balance is in a stretched out position. So it means it permanently wants to pull back in again, but it can't, it's locked there. Another atom is compacted in, squeezed inwards, but it's found a balance point at this compaction. And now it's held in suspension, but it's compacted in. It wants to bounce out, but it cannot. Now, if two of these atoms meet, you have an expanded atom and a contracted atom. If they meet, they will attract each other. That is the positive and the negative charge. They attract. But if two positive charge, two expanding atoms meet, they will repel, because they're both trying to expand. They don't like each other. They're incompatible, so they repel each other. Interestingly, it's the same with the contracting atoms. Two atoms are pulling in and locked, but they will repel. So-called negative charge will also repel each other, because two contractions will not will not release. It's like if you've got a spring compacted and another spring compacted, you bring them together, you get multiplicative contraction. It won't release. It's more powerfully contracted. So they don't like that. So two contractions will also repel. Now you've got positive, negative charge. but it's only an effect of an atom. So I can call those electrostatic atoms. Now they have a particular effect. But we've also got a neutral atom. A neutral atom is in perfect balance, but it has mass, it still has gravity. Now gravity occurs, again, let's say it like this. Gravity is actually the fundamental force, the one and only force. But electrostatics is simply an effect of gravity. It's a different gravitational effect. Let me explain it. Gravity is space contracting. It wants to go inwards to a point. So when you've got an atom, you have locked gravity in a little bubble. You have created mass. But only because space is contracting, and at that point, the contraction and expansion has balanced out and made a little bubble. But it's locked in suspension at that particular density, the most dense form of this consciousness fluid. And it's held in suspension. So space has contracted. It is more contracted relative to the other space around it. Now, in a perfectly balanced atom, there is no electrostatic force, but gravity is still there because of what it is. It is in perfect balance. When that gravity goes out of balance, so for example, this gravitational atom, it starts to want to expand and it's locked in the process of expansion. Gravity is expanding, but it cannot. Now that's a positive charge. When that gravity is locked in the contraction, but it cannot contract, now that's a negative charge. Electrostatics is still gravity, either gravity expanding or releasing. Now we have to go back one step. What is the nature of expansion and what is the nature of contraction? Well, the nature of expansion is consciousness. Consciousness creates space. Remember, it is space, but it emerges from nowhere, a point. Consciousness expands from a point. So expansion, an expanding spiral, is consciousness. But once it's expanding, it will also contract. What is contraction? Contraction is entropy. See, once you create something, you have created a dynamic. But that dynamic must balance itself out. There must always be balance. So consciousness creates a disturbance, but now that disturbance must go back to rest. It must balance out. So once you expand, it will expand, but then it will contract. It needs to contract again. There must be balance. If I stretch out an elastic band, that is consciousness. I create a stretch in the elastic band. But when I let go, no consciousness, the elastic band returns to zero, disappears again, where there is no consciousness. No consciousness means no space. A point, the 0 point. So space wants to collapse into a point all by itself. Consciousness creates space from a point, that is the expansion. But once you've got space, space all by itself is entropic. It must collapse back into a point for balance. So that is gravity, the entropic nature of space. But remember, you've got expansion and you've got contraction. There's an interplay. In the universe, you've got the circle and the line. The line represents the expansion, the creation of energy. That is electrostatics, positive and negative charge. also the north and south pole of a magnet. That creates the expansion of a circle. But now you've got the circle, the infinite expansion. That circle wants to collapse back to a point. Tantric mathematics. A point expands into a line. But when you expand into a line, an infinite line, you remember you have to expand into an infinite line in all directions at once. If you expand a line in all directions at once to infinity, you have got a sphere. Fundamental mathematics, creation of the universe. But it's consciousness only, spiritual. Consciousness, fluid, fills up this space. So we've got a neutral atom that creates mass, and neutral atoms will still attract each other from gravity because they're condensed forms of space. And the two condensed forms of space, these two objects here, imagine they are two neutral atoms. They are attracting because each one is a very condensed space, and they want to come together because they want to go to a single point. They want to keep condensing until they vanish into infinite density. And they can move in space because space is not physical. They are condensed space inside subtle spiritual space, and they can move. But each one is pulling into a point themselves. But they are stuck. You see, this crystal sphere is a collection of atoms. Each atom is pulling towards the center, but it is stuck. And all those atoms are pulling towards each other, but they are stuck in a crystal. And now I create a big circle. The whole circle is pulling in towards the middle, but it is stuck. However, that is in space, and it is fixed in space. But it can move through space. Fixed in space means I register it. We all can objectively see it. And we can all see it go from here to here. And there's one more atom that we need, which is a magnetic atom. Slightly different to an electrostatic atom. A magnetic atom is when you have got a process of electrostatics moving around and around in a circle. Think of it like this. You have positive charge, that is the process of expansion. Then you have negative charge, that is the process of contraction. But you have got these processes happening in the ether. For example, you have a positive charged atom, a negative charged atom. They will move towards each other. That is gravity, but also electrostatics. Electrostatics is simply more intense gravity, operating on a slightly different density of the ether. But when we've got moving electrostatics, we have magnetism. Put it this way, an area of expansion and an area of contraction in the ether, they will move together towards each other because they want to balance out. Like lightning in the clouds, an area of positive charge and an area of negative charge. They come together and they want to release. And sometimes they build up, they're stuck in place. They cannot release. But then suddenly they will release through a lightning bolt. That is a movement of this electrostatic build-up. Finally, the ether can release itself. There is a force holding it in place, but the build-up of the ether exceeds the force holding them in place, and it releases, creates a plasma. A release, that is electricity. Electricity is simply the process of electrostatic build-up releasing, and it releases across a distance. 2 points. So electricity actually will release to the middle, the midpoint. the point of lowest pressure. But when you've got moving electricity, now what you have is a movement through the ether. There is an after effect, a turbulence. This turbulence we can call magnetism. Now imagine if you can create this movement of electricity in a circle. This is actually how you will have a ball lightning. Ball lightning is where this movement of ether is going round and around in a circle. It's trapped itself. It cannot release. It's trying to go to the middle point where it can release, but it's stuck in a circle, chasing its own tail. This is still pure energy, pure fluid consciousness energy, but condensed and trapped, spinning around. When you have an atom like that, with electricity moving around, now we've got a magnetic field. A magnetic field creates a turbulence perpendicular to this, and now we have a torus shape, and we have a magnetic atom. They're slightly different. But they're all created from the same force. We just have to explain it, how they go together. So you have a neutral atom, then you have an electrostatic atom, and you have a magnetic atom. Now you can build up all different types of substances. And we don't need subatomic particles. There's no evidence really of a subatomic particle. Whatever they say is not really evidence. Those experiments can be explained with pure fluid ether. But there is evidence of molecules. We can see them. And we can see atoms to some degree. And we can see atomic structure, crystalline structure. So there are structures. If there are structures, there must be something holding those structures together. That is atoms. But atoms are not really particles. They're not anything different. They are the same fluid consciousness, but locked. They're trapped in a particular balance. The movement of this fluid is trapped in a clockwise and a counterclockwise bubble, a cymatic, a frequency, a harmonic of movement. It's not quite the same frequency as they talk about light. This is a frequency of the ether, movement of the ether. And because you've got these different densities, they're all interacting. So you have an atom inside space. So you have a planet. A planet is inside space. But the planet is still created from space. It's just space condensed, contracted in these little bubbles, and these little bubbles come together to create a big bubble. Just like consciousness. We are consciousness in a bubble, a soul. But you get all different levels of consciousness, different types of bubble. It's the same fluid consciousness energy, and it follows the same mathematics, the law. Incommensurability. It's all the golden ratio, a circle and a line, and the interaction of these two things. And this is the whole universe. So I hope this made sense. Please do check out the first lecture in this little series, and do leave me any questions or comments. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in any of these other videos here.